Three things I'm not going to apologize for. Number one is that I'm not American. If you can't understand me, this is the language that you learned as a child. So any problems, I'm not sorry. Second, anyone's ever heard me speak before anywhere, here or anywhere else in the world, I always bring chocolates. One is open at the end, and also come and get when they can, but when they're gone, they're gone. The second is a combination of whoever asks the best question annoys me the most, argues with me the most. I don't really know how to look at it, but in some kind of context. The other point I always make is, humorous story, I'm not going to talk about AI at all, because I'm kind of fed up of talking about it. It's all I've done for the last 6 months of my life. But ironically, I work for a company called Anecdotes.ai. We named the company that in 2020, not that old, when AI wasn't really a thing. And ironically, we don't do much with AI. So who knows, maybe it's good marketing in the future thought. I am the field CISO there, and I do a lot of go-to-market strategy. I will not product pitch. You have one where I told you what it is, and you'll have one later when I actually talk about it a little bit for 30 seconds. If I overstep the line, raise your hand and tell me to shut up, and I will. I'm going to do things the opposite way around. I'm going to start with questions. My title is pretty simple. I think SOC 2 is good. Yes, it is meant to be controversial and incendiary and meant to cause people to want to argue. That is the point. Anyone got any questions to kick off before I move on? I don't want to disagree straight off the bat. I have limited visibility thanks to just how bright those lights are. I don't, is the honest truth. But we'll get into that a little bit more as we go. I think SOC 2 is better than nothing, in the same way that being punched in the stomach is better than being punched in the face. But we'll get into that a little bit more deeply. I like to storytell. That's kind of my style. I'm not very factual. If you came for interesting factual content, feel free to get up and leave. If you came to be mildly entertained before lunch, mildly entertained, then please stay. If I'm not entertaining, then again, please leave. In the kind of Gladiator 2 coming, if you are not entertained, feel free to give me the thumb. And I don't know if they have a kind of kill switch, literally, but we'll find out. So you can't see from being this close up. I have a scar on my head, which I gained 2 weeks ago. I have a garage next to my house and a gym in the garage. Myself and my wife go in the gym quite a lot. We left, I think it's about 2 weeks ago today, in fact. And I realized I'd forgotten my baseball cap. So I went back to go into the garage. And my wife hit the button, which brings the garage door down. The next thing I knew, I was on the floor and there was blood everywhere. It was bad. I ended up at A&E. For those who don't know, the British healthcare system, the NHS, is flawed, is a polite word for it. Your average wait time in an emergency room is about 7 hours. So I ended up in a minor injuries unit. And what they did is they found some glue and effectively what looks like little bits of sticky tape, and that put it back together. Mainly they wanted to stitch it, but I didn't let them because I was due to go cycling at the weekend in Mallorca, and they told me if I had stitches in, I couldn't wear a helmet. So why am I telling you about this? Partly because I thought the picture was kind of cool, but more importantly, there's some lessons learned here. Firstly, never trust your wife or spouse. Part B of that, especially not if she's aware of the life assurance policy that you have. Then definitely never trust her. She swears it was an accident. She claims it wasn't her fault, but whatever. Risk management. If you do nothing, this is what happens. If you don't consider risk at all, you end up, I got to cancel the meetings today. Point. Some glue and glorified duct tape solves the problem. You just need to start with something. It doesn't need to be the gold standard. They want to stitch it. I didn't want them to. Why? End goal in mind. Next point. I wanted to go cycling. I didn't really care about the stitches in my head. I was thinking ahead of time. Right, do what fixes the problem now. Worry about the future later. This will all become relevant. I'm tying this all back to SOC 2 somehow. Just bear with me. Automation is the solution unless the automation leaves you unconscious with blood everywhere. All my images are generated by ChatGPT. Turns out it can do pretty much anything, but you have to interrogate it quite a lot. Why am I starting with this? Because no, I do not believe that SOC 2 is the best security framework out there. Right, I'm not an idiot, and please don't think I am. NIST is far superior. Knocks it out. I don't know why there's a floating beach ball with chains, but I couldn't seem to remove that no matter what promise I did. No idea. But SOC 2 is a foundation. You need to start with something to be able to build from. And as far as I'm concerned, it's the simplest, the quickest, the easiest, the dirtiest one to kind of get your hands dirty with and to build from there. Breaches are fun for hackers. and nobody else. I've been in several incidents in my life. I don't know if it's a British time zone thing. I've worked in the US while living in the UK for a long time. And I've now been in 4 incidents in my most recent career time span. And they've all happened between the hours of 2 and 5 a.m. UK time. And the only response, we'll come back to my wife. She'll probably watch this on YouTube, so I'll get in trouble later, but it's later, so it's fine. The only thing I ever get is not, oh, that sounds terrible, dear. Like, that's awful that you've not slept for 24 hours. It's that I woke the kids up at 3 a.m. That's all I ever hear about. But yeah, breaches are fun. It's whack-a-mole, right? I like the idea that we have this kind of dam in the wall and you plug it, you've seen the images where you're trying to stop the water flowing out. I think whack-a-mole is more of a fun analogy. The modern CISO, the modern security leader, has so many problems to try and fix. And those moles are getting faster and faster. And honestly, it's physically impossible. Like, I look at most data breaches that happen, and a lot of eyes that are more junior or more technical or whatever kind of world you come from go, oh, they should have done this, should have done that, and they should have done this. I was actually just podcasting about a couple of hours ago about the Snowflake breach and how many people have said, well, this is what Snowflake should have done, should have done, should have done. I've sat in those shoes. Like, it's very easy to say that retrospectively. The reality is that we've now inherited so much complexity in security. When you look at kind of GRC, when you look at VRM, when you look at the wider AppSec spectrum, it's now got so hard to manage that it's very hard for us to actually hit all those moles at the same time. You're seeing constantly. So data breaches have gone up by 78%. That was last year. This year, it's due to go up by an even higher margin on top of that 78% rise. And the average cost of a data breach, which helpfully and luckily major Fortune 100 companies, is at $4.4 million, which is a lot of money. What's wrong with the image? Anybody? There's something fundamentally wrong. Yes. Thank you. People with intellect. This is wonderful. You can't be SOC 2 certified. It's physically impossible. Short kind of mute point, if you want to understand the difference between an attestation and certification. A certification requires a body who certifies your through an external audit and said, yes, you have met the requirements of said certification. Here is a certificate, hence the certification part, and you hold that and you keep it. Examples being ISO 27001 for the Europeans that came out of Switzerland. SOC 2 is not one of those. Yes, you have audits. Yes, you have a report. Yes, there are gaps. But it's an attestation. No one has ever been SOC 2 Type 2 certified. This is not relevant to my presentation at all. I just want people to stop saying it. So I'm hoping that people will take this away and go back and maybe feed into their companies, and we'll all be in a better place. I like this image. It's one of my favorites. SOC 2 should be the bouncer to at least show people that you give a damn. Now, I bring this into context because I don't think bouncers do very much. Like, yes, they're threatening, but like, they don't really stop that much. If you want to break into a building, you're still going to break into a building. Like, if you want to go and wreak havoc in the nightclub, you'll turn up with like 20 guys on mopeds carrying crowbars. Like, it doesn't matter that there's a bouncer there who happens to go to the gym 6 times a week. Bouncers show that you really actually give a damn. It's a deterrent. And SOC 2 is similar. It shows, and we'll come on to trust later, but it shows at least at a base standard, you give a damn about security. You thought about something and said, yeah, we should probably do some baseline controls. Yeah, that would be a good idea, you know? MDM, access, AppSec. It sounds like good things. And you did something about it. I don't know why I put this slide up, but I figured I would to highlight the fact that SOC 2 is not very old. It's really recent, actually, in terms of its current context, in terms of a security standpoint. There's things that far, far predate it in terms of how security was regulated and governed. But the only real important point I've got from there is it's in 2011, and it says changes have been made, but I'd still argue minimal changes have been made. I still find myself explaining to auditors the fact that key rotation protocols aren't relevant in 2024 because I use AWS and I don't care because AWS does it for me. And time sync protocols died when physical servers stopped being used. The reality is twofold of why I highlight this. Firstly is the fact that it hasn't moved very far. Secondly is the fact that the auditors who have been using the standard for multiple years need to advance their technical understanding to give us something useful. It's based on 5 principles, if you don't know, and this is me trying to make them more accessible to people. Security. Nobody wants their data hacked. No, really, nobody wants their data hacked. Like if you go on I Got Pwned, you'll find out if your data's probably been hacked. And I guarantee in this room, I reckon 5 of you probably haven't been hacked at some point. And those are the 5 of you that also wear tinfoil hats and live in the mountains. Not these mountains, but wider mountains. Availability. In terms of availability, the fact that servers are down is not a good thing, right? We talk about 5 nines in the banking and the financial world. It's very rare to have 5 nines in any other world, but any servers being down is a bad thing. Process integrity or process integrity. You want data to actually be what it's supposed to be. You don't want it to be what somebody else thinks it should be or what they changed it or they tweaked it to be. Confidentiality. It's probably good that your secrets aren't leaked to the wide world. I'm not allowed to be political, but you have presidential candidates whose secrets got leaked to the wide world. If confidentiality was in place, you probably have a different electoral landscape in front of you. And privacy. Nobody likes snooping. I originally put not even Snoop Dogg, but then I realized that was probably a bit niche. This is supposed to be... So I actually asked it to try and make a superhero that looked like me, juggling many things. I don't know how effectively that's been achieved. Probably not very effectively, but he's at least got brown hair that's somewhat quiffed. The reality is that you have to have a basis for good risk management. Anything you use as a tool to understand what risks a business has is good. Anything you do to actually consider risk as a business is good. It should not be a box-ticking exercise and a pat on the back. And we will come to that in a minute when I have my personal passion topic. Hats. There's I read my daughter a book that I couldn't find the picture to put on the front about a pig that has many hats. You've probably never seen it. It's not remotely relevant. Don't know why I told you. But the reality is that hats fit different people in different ways, and control sets fit different businesses in different ways. I found this ironic, but I'm going to read it because I thought it was interesting. Startups on average, or growth companies, are effective in 70% of their controls. Accounting firms 85%, which is, I think, slightly humorous since they're the ones that audit most of us. Large financials at 95%, which I feel slightly better about since they've got my money, the stuff that my wife's trying to access by killing me with garage doors. The government 92%, I thought that was quite high. I think the government at 92% is slightly complimentary, but again, that's my opinions held to my own. And healthcare at 82%, which is great to know that the data that you care about most about your actual health is about as well, in fact, less protected than the accounting firms protect their client data. Continuous monitoring is my only product pitch. This is literally what we do. I'm not going to pitch it. If you want to talk to me about it later, ask me about it, but this is literally what we do. It's like keeping an eye on your ex's Instagram, but for security. That's what continuous monitoring is. It's realizing that the controls that underpin a SOC 2 or a control framework like NIST, that it's very hard. If anyone in this room has been an analyst or had to respond to GRC requirements, it's a complete pain in the arse that like once a year someone goes, can you go and please find these 175 evidence pieces and send them back to me and actually connect with this auditor portal, and the auditor doesn't want them in that form. They want them. Honestly, it's like one of the worst jobs in the world. So trying to monitor that continuously has 2 benefits. Firstly, it saves you the problem of having to deal with that on an annual basis or biannual level, what kind of frequency it might be. And secondly, it means that you actually know what's going on. But one of the things that I hate most about security certifications is that they happen once a year, maybe every 6 months at best. What happens in between? Like, you might have passed a SOC on one point. The day later, you were probably pretty crap and you probably failed. So like, I think having a continuous monitoring that shows you what happens now and not yesterday or not last week or not last month is the key to how you really win. Trust. This is actually a real quote, which is quite worrying. That it's a security version of putting a ring on it. And this is genuinely someone that I quoted off of LinkedIn. Commit to keeping their data safe. That's someone's review of SOC 2. I don't know if they're big Beyonce fans and that explains why they put this quote up, or if they don't understand that SOC 2 is not really, in best world, the best possible security that you can have. But that's what they went with. Fines. I like to think of security control frameworks like SOC 2 as traffic laws. You could run the red light. In fact, I often do in the US. This is, again, a separate tangent story, but I've learned now, after living here in multiple years, that your amber light stays amber for less time than a British amber light does. So when I think I've got time to go through, I floor it, and then it's red. I've actually explained that to 3 separate policemen at this point. And at no point have I actually had any consequences other than someone saying they liked my accent, which was the great thing about the state of Utah. So yeah, you could get fined, right? That's the reality, is that the cost of a data breach is, if SOC 2 costs you, I don't know, tools, audits, people, 50 to 100K, I guarantee you whatever you have, no matter how small, it's going to cost you more than 100K. And the real simple fact here of why I say SOC 2 is good security is it's the foundation. It is literally the easiest thing you can do in security. If you can build those controls and make them work and make them effective, you can do anything. You can build on it to much more superior, far-reaching, and interesting frameworks. Here's some fun facts and myths. SOC 2 only applies to large companies or enterprises. That's complete nonsense. In fact, it's more prevalent inside of small businesses, people who are startups or have 100-person enterprises and 100-person entities. It is just tick box compliance. Well, that's sort of true because people review it in that way and they're simply like control yes, control no. How many people are Drada and Banter customers? Before I offend anybody. No hands. No, I don't believe that's true in this room. Matt Hillary's not been doing enough work, CISO of Drada. He lives in the state. But that's the definition of like, basically your control works and they'll show you a tick box. That's where the word tick box comes from. It's effectively a green tick that says control is effective. But it's more complicated than that. Like SOC 2 should be built on the fact that you actually understand that those controls are not just there to say, yes, I do them, but they underpin actual cultural changes and actual approaches, actual processes, actual technologies that secure and underpin the security of the business. SOC 2 is expensive. It's not, but you know what is expensive? Like getting a data breach or losing your job. Pretty expensive. So I stick with those. I have coined a phrase on LinkedIn, which is SOC in a box. I think I might have stolen it from someone else first, but apparently I'm being quoted with being the first who said it first. Assurance for me is about meaningful learnings as a business. SOC in a box is this analogy that you can buy a tool and get an auditor who will give you a SOC 2 certificate for like 10 grand, 20 grand max. That really scares me. Like, how many hours can an audit firm afford to do work if they're going to only charge $1,000 and still make profit? The reality is, if you want meaningful assurance, it takes an audit firm to understand your technology, to understand your company, to understand your team, to understand your processes and procedures. It means you actually have to put effort in there. Like, SOC in a box is probably killing our industry. I'm not slagging off any products, but if you have a product combo with an auditor that gets you a SOC 2 for under 20 grand, really rethink what they're going to tell you, because all they want to do is make sure they pass the audit. I don't want to be in that place. Yes, my CEO wants his SOC 2 and he wants me to have to sell to his customers, but I need to know what's broken so that I know what I'm going to fix, because I'd rather be arguing with the CEO about the cost of a SOC 2 than I would be like a Tim Brown or a Joey Sullivan arguing with Congress about whether they did things right or not. So I think for me, that's kind of the one point. Key takeaways. See, I managed to wrap up and nearly finish on time. It doesn't really matter if you choose SOC 2 or not. What matters is that you do something. Choose a baseline control set. Whether it's ISO, SOC, go straight to NIST. I don't really care. Choose a baseline control set and make sure that those controls are in place and effective and monitored and continuously monitored. It gets a bad rep because people do it very badly. I said, if you want to use it as cheap and quickly as possible, knock yourself out, but don't come to me when it all falls apart. If you want to use it as the baseline for starting enterprise level security, that's good. And NIST is always better, just in case you think I am an idiot, which is possible. I'm part of the Salt Lake CISO community. If anyone is doing the escape room, that's my session hint code and the QR that gets you there. I'll leave that for a second. Rather than moving on to the more question slide, I'll just take questions here in case anyone wants to use that one. Any questions, arguments, interrogations, pointless anecdotes, anything? Or I'm going to keep rambling and keep you all here for a while. Someone put their hand up right at the back. Yes, think of it as being like a stepped program. SOC 2 is considered the gold standard. The problem that I can't really see to see a reaction, but the problem that you've got with the AICPA, and this is a separate tangent, does anyone work for like the AICPA before I say anything? No. Is anyone a lawyer? Also no. Good. Excellent. So the problem is that you kind of like you have high trust for HIPAA stuff. You've got the AICPA kind of have a monopoly on this, and they will then try and find more ways possible to fit their product range certifications and therefore the sales that they make into multiple companies. So they try and gear a framework to every entity, right? So if you can do SOC 2, great. If you can't do SOC 1, if you can't do SOC, if like whatever they want to go to, they will find a way to kind of shoehorn it into your business model to try and make themselves money. That's my very cynical view of security certifying bodies. And oh yeah, question down there.
I'm going to ask what happened to SOC 1 and what will SOC 3?
Well, you're just trying to be a punch in the face now. SOC 1 is, I almost think SOC 1's pointless, right? A type 1 certificate, so let's go to type 1 rather than go to SOC 1, is literally a point in time did things happen. That is completely meaningless. And a SOC 2 type 3, I still don't understand, because that appears to just be a public sharing of the SOC 2 report that you could have shared anyway. So that one confuses me a lot. When will SOC 3 come out, or when will they review and change SOC? Hopefully soon, because a lot of the world has changed. ISO just changed its standard to be more reflective of the real world. Neither of them have actually addressed AI yet, machine identity, and various other topics that currently affect AppSec and cloud security. So I still think they're pretty backwards in their approach. Hence I say that you want to build off of a control framework like NIST in an ideal world, because that's current, it's regularly changed, and it reflects actual technology that's used in actual businesses. I know it was a joke, but hopefully that gave you at least some interesting matter to go around it.
In our my program, did a lot of talk about ISO. Except for certainty, we don't like those much. It's like, get the such that breaks down both you're being not done so well on yourself. But the ISO people just, you're being kind of give us a and say, this means I'm good. And it's like, well, I don't know anything about your environment, but this means I'm good. Here you go.
That sounds like a prejudice against Europeans, but whatever. You can ask for the audit that supports the certification, right?
They never do it. But no,
who do you work for?
Yeah.
Are you, oh yeah, I was going to say, are you bigger? Yes, you're big enough. You're big enough to say, give us the ISO or we're not doing business with you. That's the reality. If you're a small fish, that's slightly hard. If you're a big fish, you just say, I don't give a damn. Give me your full audit report or we're not concluding the process.
Based on, I want what?
Yeah, getting to a single global standard of the control framework that cross maps is tricky. I already told myself I'm not into product pitch. If you want to talk to me afterwards, I can tell you how we do that. We do that problem. But that's all I'm going to say. Anybody else? There's a hand over there.
What?
I love when anyone in America says that NIST sounds vague. Do you know what GDPR says for securing systems? Anybody know? Or the technical security controls in GDPR are? Adequate and sufficient. It's like one of the shortest articles in the entire of the framework. It says, make sure your technical and logical controls are adequate and sufficient. In that case, NIST is like a dictionary. But no, I do agree that there's some vagueness in there. They do it intentionally, so there's multiple ways to solve the same problem. But I think if you take any specific NIST control, I said I wasn't going to talk about AI, right? This is different. It's one of the very few security uses right now that's good in GPT. Is if you give it a NIST control and say, give me some possible viable solutions and tools or vendors who can help in this control requirement, it will give you great answers. That's my genuine recommendation. Any more? No? Going once? Going twice? No more questions? Sold. This is me. If you want to email about anything, please do. If you want to find me on LinkedIn, I ramble on podcasts a lot about all kinds of nonsense. This morning I did a really interesting one on what diversity actually means with a guy called Adam Arellano, who is the VP of Security at Traceable and went to Utah University, so from in-state. Who asked the SOC 1 and SOC 3 question? Was it you? You can have the box of chocolates that's sealed. I like that one. The open box here, come and take what you want. Thank you very much for listening. I won't stand between you and lunch anymore. I appreciate your time. I'm here all week.